Okay, colleagues, good morning and welcome to today's meeting for the Committee for the Economy, which will be in public session and will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings. At this stage, members, we have a full attendance both in the room and joined online by Padraig Delargy, Sinead McLaughlin and Jonathan Buckley. Declarations of interest. Members wish to make any declarations of interest? Not at this stage. Okay, chairperson's business. Members, there's just a couple of issues I want to raise. So, unspent childcare allocation. During economy questions on the 24th of February, it was indicated that 1.8 million, which had been allocated from DFE, from the Department for Education to the Department for the Economy for interventions to support childcare providers in 24-25 is being unspent. The Minister indicated that £50 million is to be earmarked for the childcare strategy in 25-26 and is understood to be part of the Department for Education budget. The Minister also referred to ongoing research by InvestNI on this issue. Are members content that we seek an update on the research being undertaken by Invest Northern Ireland? Content, okay. Item 3.2, members, gender pay gap. During the similar questions, it was indicated that gender employment gap research that the Minister commissioned has already been made available to market research work on targeted business support for childcare providers. Members content to also seek a copy of that research?
Yep.
And then finally, there was reference made in the question time to the ongoing delay to the North-South interconnector and the consequences this may have for security of supply in Northern Ireland. Members content to seek an update from the Department on that? Okay. Draft minutes then, members, are at page 7 of our meeting from the 19th of February. Are members content that that's a true and accurate reflection of our deliberations? Agreed. Any issue members wish to raise under matters arising that isn't covered in the agenda later today? Not seeing any. We'll then move quickly to item 6, which is our friends and colleagues from NIC2. So I invite you all forward, ladies and gentlemen, if that's okay. Members, the committee will now hear from the Northern Ireland Committee for the Irish Congress of Trade Unions on its views to some of the proposals contained within the Employment Bill consultation. Can I refer members to a briefing paper provided by NIC2 at page 43, a previous summary of responses to the consultation from the Department at page 48, and at page 90 and 99. Could I welcome colleagues here today? Jerry Murphy, who is the Assistant General Secretary, Jackie White from the Ulster Teachers Union, John Patrick Clayton, who is Vice Chair of NIC2, Claire Moore, Equality Officer, and Kevin Doherty. Colleagues, you're all very, very welcome. We are delighted to welcome you and to hear your views on the ongoing process. And with that, I'm happy to hand over to you if you are content.
Well, good morning, Chair. Good morning, Committee. We thank you for the opportunity to speak to you here today and to give evidence on following the consultation on the Employment Bill, Good Jobs Bill. We're here on behalf of the Irish Congress of Trade Unions and the 34 affiliated trade unions representing close to 200,000 workers across Northern Ireland. We represent workers across various sectors, from public services to the private industry, and are dedicated to advocating for fair wages and decent working conditions for all workers. We're the largest civic society organisation on the island of Ireland, and we're committed to promoting economic development, social cohesion and justice for all. We believe that a thriving economy is one where workers have access to secure, well-paid jobs through strengthening the rights of working people, and we can achieve strengthening the rights of working people so we can achieve sustainable growth for everyone. Our consultation response benefited from engaging with our affiliates and dipping into their vast wells of expertise and experience in this area. As the committee is aware, the consultation on the proposed Good Jobs Bill, the Employment Bill, contains 31 proposals around 4 themes. 19 of these proposals, are over 60%, simply align Northern Ireland with Britain's standards. The remaining 12 proposals are under active consideration by the British government also, and are essential to ensure that workers in Northern Ireland are not left behind again. However, parity should not be our only ambition. Among these 12 proposals, introducing the right to disconnect and banning fire and rehire practices should be undisputed. The disgraceful actions of P&O ferries at Larne Harbour in 2022 highlight the urgent need for such protections. In our consultation response, NIC2 proposed alternative solutions to support good business during genuine distress. Four of the proposals address the excessive costs and burdens imposed on trade unions at no expense to employers. Another 4 proposals aim to strengthen social dialogue and collective employment relations in Northern Ireland, providing workers with an independent voice. We welcome the package of proposals to be brought forward in the proposed bill and reflected in the recent consultation. We see it as a commitment to raising the minimum statutory floor of working conditions here. We support this because the evidence shows that poor quality jobs have a negative effect on workers, the society and indeed economy. A Good Jobs Bill will play a significant role in addressing several key economic policy issues in Northern Ireland. Poor quality jobs are bad for workers and their families. Insecure jobs with unstable hours, where workers do not have a voice and where the workers' ability to balance their work with their life is difficult, creates stress, burnout, and an increased risk of illness directly affecting workers' mental and physical health. The academic and research evidence is crystal clear that bad jobs have a negative impact on workers' health and living standards. Economic inactivity comes up time and again as one of Northern Ireland's most pressing economic issues. Nearly 27% of working age people in Northern Ireland are defined as economically inactive. While there are numerous reasons for people not participating in the labour market, research has consistently shown there to be a strong link between economic inactivity and poor job quality. The rationale here is not hard to understand. When we face unstable or low quality jobs, such as those with 0 hours contracts or precarious work, they are less likely to re-enter the workforce, while 0 hours contracts are sometimes presented as flexible options. In practice, an unstable income, uncertain hours, and a lack of security make them a high-risk choice. The quality of jobs also impacts on productivity, another key issue for us all. Our economy has, by any measure, underperformed over the last 2 decades. It needs to move towards a high productivity model of economic development, and this policy goal has already established cross-party consensus. The evidence is clear. Investing in good jobs functions as a driver of productivity. Economies with a higher proportion of stable, well-paid jobs tend to see stronger workforce engagement, lower absenteeism, and greater innovation. A review by Bosworth and Warhurst in 2021, which has been drawn upon and utilised by our own Labour Relations Agency, found a positive link between job quality and productivity, with 3 of the 4 strongest indicators requiring little cost to employers. Without policy interventions to improve baseline conditions, Northern Ireland will continue to struggle transitioning to a high productivity economy. Good jobs will also go some way in addressing the disparities between responsible employers who offer fair wages and decent working conditions and those who rely on exploitative and low-cost models. Many ethical businesses face competition from unscrupulous employers using precarious and exploitative work practices to keep costs down. By establishing these minimum standards, the bill will help create a fairer environment that encourages and gives cover to those employers who wish to invest in their workforce. I will finish with the importance of the trade union voice and representation element of the bill. The restrictive laws we currently operate under not only undermine a worker's ability to secure fair pay and conditions, but also hinder economic growth by discouraging collaboration between employers and unions. We at ICTU believe that the Good Job Bill includes provisions that promote and develop a strong collective employment relationships between employers and employees, which will benefit both sides. The trade union movement believes that strengthening the trade union voice, representation and collective bargaining is central to improving job quality and creating a fairer, more inclusive economy. Trade unions play a critical role in articulating the interests of workers and ensuring that workers share in the benefits of economic growth alongside employers and wider society. Their presence in the workplace fosters democratic decision making, giving workers a collective voice that helps balance the power dynamic and creates fairer outcomes. Furthermore, trade union representation enhances workplace stability by reducing conflict and promoting dialogue. Finally, collective bargaining remains a vital tool for improving job quality and fostering a productive economy. International evidence shows that collective bargaining frameworks lead to higher wages, job security and workforce engagement, benefits that support both workers and businesses. The economic and social benefits of collective employment relations, referred to as collective bargaining, are well evidenced. The Good Jobs Bill should therefore not only establish minimum standards for job quality, but also create a framework that promotes the growth of collective bargaining across sectors, ensuring that both workers and employers have the opportunity to reach mutually beneficial agreements. By doing so, the bill will help lay the foundation for a more balanced and prosperous economy where fair wages, stable work and decent conditions are accessible to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. And any of your colleagues want to make any remarks at this stage?
No, we thought that...
No, of course. No problem at all. Thank you very much for that, Jerry. If you're content, maybe I could just start. So the committee, from its inception and the publication from the Minister in terms of his economic vision, have been struggling in some ways to try and define what a good job is. Some people have particular views of what a good job is, others have a different view. Do you have a niche or a defined definition of what your movement believes is a good job?
Well, the department have concluded that the Carnegie Institute provide an outline of what a good job is, but we see fundamentally a good job is one which has terms and conditions which reflect the needs and desires of the workers and at the same time align with the objectives of the business and the industry. We see wages which reflect the skill, experience and investment of time and labour which the worker puts in. We also envisage a good job would be stable. It would further offer opportunity for development in terms of the professional nature of the work, or would allow the worker to improve their capacity to carry out the activity that they're engaged in, and would also would be a positive experience for the worker as well. Now, some of my colleagues may also wish to contribute on that, but
I think in addition to that, Jerry and Chair, if I may, obviously work-life balance arrangements are also key to how we would view a good job. I mean, Jerry has already said that the Carnegie framework gives us a broad vision, and I think we broadly agree with that. But there are other measures such as work-life balance, the ability to have some kind of control and autonomy within your job, which we feel is extremely important, and of course the opportunity to have voice and representation. And that's obviously where the trade union movement brings in our particular expertise, and our colleagues who've joined us today from our affiliated unions may well wish to say a little bit more about that. But I think those are broadly speaking the elements that we believe make a good job. And I think Jerry has emphasised the whole area of security as opposed to precarious work. And again, that's something which is very important to us in our membership.
And maybe just to add briefly to that, Chair, I think as Jerry and Claire have just outlined, for us, and certainly from perspective of my own union, Unison, the bill is an opportunity for us to set certain minimum standards as well, and to address some long-standing issues that we've seen across different sectors of the workforce. I think what a good job is will probably differ to a degree from sector to sector, and it will reflect the differing needs, as Jerry has said, depending if it's the private sector or even in aspects of the public sector. So career pathways can be very, very important for some people. Training opportunities can be very, very important for some people. But equally, a bill like this, I think, is about setting certain minimum standards across the piece. And certainly in some of the sectors in which we would organise, a sector like social care, for example, hourly rates of pay are very important, but also security of income is important, and that relates to issues around precarious working and security of hours. And also that opportunity, as Claire has said, I think, to facilitate worker voice and representation and engagement and dialogue between employers and trade unions. Getting that across the economy, I think, is very, very important, so we can actually get into those more sectoral specific issues that maybe further elaborate as to what a good job means. The Carnegie standards, I think, set a good framework, but what that means across each sector will probably differ from sector to sector.
And Jerry, would it be a fair assessment that this has been a co-design process between yourselves and the department?
That was certainly the department's ambition, that it would be co-design. The process of engagement began some time ago, February of 2024. We had our first meeting with the department in, I think it was the 24th actually of February last year, and at that meeting they certainly indicated that it was the view of the then minister that it should be a co-design process. We welcome that, or we welcomed that very much at the time. It's not how things transpired. Well, it certainly wasn't our experience. We didn't experience a co-design process. We held a number of meetings with the department. We made it known that we were up for co-design. But it's my understanding that the representatives of the business and industry groupings weren't in a position at that stage to engage in such a process. We went on then to hold a series of meetings with the department and indeed across all of our affiliates to contribute to, formulating a view on what it should be in a bill, and indeed that took us right through to the consultation period.
Tell me about your experience then, if your view is, so the department have said to us that it is co-design with your organisation, your view that it has not been?
Well, if co-design is understood to mean...
No, it's your view, so but it's either your view is that it's been co-designed with you or it hasn't?
We feel very much that we worked with the department in the formulation of this bill, or in the formulation of the outline of the bill. Nobody's seen what's in the bill yet, obviously. So yes, we worked with the officials. We had, I think, 4 to 5 meetings with them. Yeah. That process began from almost a blank piece of paper, and evolved into the 4 themes which are now before you, or the 4 themes which are central to the bill. We found that to be constructive. We found them to be open to discussing things beyond the catch-up. So I'm particularly referencing here the trade union voice and representation piece, which go beyond. They're not some of the 19 recommendations which are catch-up. We were also able to put them in touch with some other people who contributed to the process. So, for example, when it came to talking about 0 hours contracted with them, we were able to put them in touch with colleagues of ours in the Republic of Ireland who could contribute to that interaction. Yes, it was a helpful enough process from that point of view. It would have been better, I would suggest, Chair, if the business community had have engaged with us and the department, together. I think that might have been helpful. But as
I don't mean to push you, but the department have said to us their view is that this was a co-design process with the trade union movement. So I'm just trying to push you if that's your assessment.
Yeah, if I may, Chair and Jerry. Yeah, there was. Jerry's talking about. We were expecting co-design. We sitting in the room with the employers and the Department of Economy from the beginning of February. That didn't work out, as Jerry mentioned, and regrettably so. But we did have co-design through the engagement forum.
Yes.
The engagement forum met, I think, on the 11th of April, and we had a briefing from the department which gave the heads of what was going to be in the consultation. Though we all knew in advance, it was easy to guess what was coming. So there have been discussions at the engagement forum with the employers, with us all together. You're all aware of the engagement forum, yes? So it's where the trade unions, the employers, and business bodies sit down together. So there has been co-design that sort of way. Also, at that same meeting, the Labour Relations Agency announced that it was engaging 2 consultants who would engage with, one would engage with the business side and one would engage with the trade union side. So that there was sort of work through those consultants as well. We may haven't been physically in the room, but there was that sort of. So there was a strong element of co-design. We would have liked to have seen it, right from day one with the Department of the Economy. So I think the department's view is quite correct. There was co-design in this. There was a number of meetings with engagement.
So your view is that it was co-designed with you? Yeah. Okay, no problem. Is there anything in your view that's was missing in the consultation that you would have liked to have seen? Stronger proposals in anything that was published by the department?
Well, we submitted a 132-page response to the department. They probably not thank us for it. But it was based on the consultation, as Jerry said, across the members. But the focus for us in the creation of good jobs is stopping insecurity in the workplace, but also then, as Jerry said, trying to make a cultural change. Because for years the trade union movement has been perceived, probably from the 1980s, as being some sort of bogeyman for employers. And what we're trying to point out is, no, that's not the case. We all want to work together to make sure businesses and the economy are successful, because if our businesses aren't successful, then our members don't have jobs, they don't have decent pay rises, they don't have security of employment. So we want people to see it and to look at the evidence from the likes of the OECD, even the IMF, who are now talking about collective bargaining as the way forward to reduce inequality and to increase productivity. It's all there. It's within our document, all these, when we can provide the committee with the links to all these documents.
Even a couple of examples of any missed opportunities?
Well, we don't know what they're going to come up with, but we have concentrated heavily on workers' voices. Jerry said 19 of the issues were simply catch-up and very little cost to business or administrative burdens. Of the other ones as well, as Jerry mentioned, the likes of right to disconnect and fire, there should be simple, straightforward issues. There are 2 that are issues that we would like to have sit down and have more discussion with the employers, and that being 0 hours contracts and status, worker status, which is key. But we're not sure whether they're going to be followed in the bill when it comes. But the other point is the engagement. The department has made clear, and the minister made clear, that engagement will still continue, and we're always keen to engage. The FSB are our neighbours just up the street, so our doors are always open to have a chat.
Just in terms of the 0 hour contract, is it the view then of the organisation that they should be banned completely?
Well, that's the position that we have put forward in the consultation. That's the view that was expressed in New Decade, New Approach as well. It was stated that was one of the commitments that was within it. So we have other proposals within it. But yeah, we are calling for an outright ban. But we are prepared to sit down and look at, if there are issues, then how do we get around them? There've been introduction of banded hours in the south. No disruption to employers, to business and the rest of it. So there's things that can be done, but it'd be useful to get into the detail. If there are problems, we're keen to explore them.
I wonder, sorry, if I might just come back to your earlier question about specific points that we maybe raised that weren't included within the consultation. There's one quite specific issue that Kevin will be aware of, and it flows from a judgment of the Supreme Court, a case called Mercer, and it's a point in relation to trade union officials who suffer detriment short of dismissal when engaged in lawful industrial action. So it was a case that my own union, Unison, supported a member in taking all the way to the Supreme Court, and ultimately it was a case that engaged the Human Rights Act, and the Supreme Court made a declaration of incompatibility in relation to the law as it stands in Britain around this area in terms of detriment short of dismissal. So we obviously, in our response, flagged that up to the department as an area that will need some examination here, because whilst a different law applies in Northern Ireland, they are very, very comparable. There are great similarities, and so logically, if the Supreme Court has held that the current law in Britain is incompatible, that would suggest there is a need to examine that issue here as well. Now, whether that's done through this bill or whether that's done separately, I don't know, but I do think it's probably an area that we would want to also further engage with the department on, to get a sense from them as to how they plan to address that if there's the Supreme Court judgment there.
No problem. And then just two final quick questions from me. Just in terms of a number of the proposals within the bill, my particular view is that there should have been stronger policy direction set within the consultation set out by the department. My view is that this was, in some aspects, this was a call for evidence rather than a consultation. But that's my personal view. Just in terms of some of the issues, and whilst the committee hasn't carried out a formal process yet in terms of the bill, because we haven't seen the policy direction of the department, in the engagement that we have had, there's been a couple of concerns raised. So one was just in relation to the notice period for industrial action. Just keen to get your view. Do you think that should be reduced from its current level to, and what level you think it should be reduced to in terms of a notice period?
Well, that proposal is included in that whole section of workers' voice and representation, and my feeling, I'm going to hand this to Kevin, but my feeling here is that we need to look at that section in its entirety, because it's very much reflective of that culture change that he was alluding to earlier. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. And Chair, just in terms of the comment you had made about the call for evidence, I have written a number of consultation responses on employment law for NICIC too. The last equivalent one was the 2013 Employment Law Review. Like this one, it ran over the summer, which is not uncommon. And like this one, it was very detailed. It got 35 responses, which is an average response for an employment bill. This one got 192, a massive response. But within that consultation, there was also call for evidence. And in every consultation that I've been involved in drafting for NICIC to the department, there's always been elements of calls for evidence within it. It's never firm. Yes.
In relation to this, I'm just conscious that I have a lot of members here. Just in terms,
and on the point, just in terms, yes, there's a lot of legislation introduced from the 80s and 90s restricting trade unions and industrial action. To us, the balloting process as it stands now extends a dispute period. Then there's duplication around requirements on trade unions, around balloting and providing notices and all the rest of it. All this extends the dispute period. Both sides get into trenches. This is not a way to do business. So we are looking to reduce to 5 days in the notice. We want to shorten the timescale. The focus mind's about a resolution. Nobody wants to go on strike. When workers go on strike, it's a last straw, because they're losing pay, they're losing benefits, there's a breakdown in relationships with the employer. We don't want that. We want to make it as simple and straightforward as possible to resolve disputes.
why 5 days? Why not 1 or 2?
Yeah, we were being reasonable, if you know what I mean, because we were saying, look, okay, reduce it down to 5 days. It's sending a signal.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That we want the focus minds to get disputes, not whenever a ballot takes
Resolution.
place.
No, 100%. Okay, perfect. I appreciate that, Emma.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks to you all for coming along this morning and for the briefing paper that you put forward to us. I wanted to ask something around the I suppose the evidence that you provided around productivity and how productivity can increase when workers' rights are prioritised. I suppose looking at it from my own personal perspective, increasing the rights of workers and increasing the access to workers' rights for people who mightn't be trained on such matters is sort of a fundamental element of my politics and something that I believe is the right thing to do. But you mentioned there in your exchange with the chair about the lack of engagement from some within the business sector or some employers that you found quite frustrating. And I think the framing of this as a positive in terms of productivity and how economic and activity, I mean, to me, it sort of makes sense in that people who are happy and content in their job are obviously going to work better and harder and be more dedicated to what they're doing than somebody who feels that they're being suppressed or being taken advantage of. But I wondered if you'd speak to that in terms of how that can be used as a motivator for employers.
Well, there's a vast bulk of academic research across not only these two islands, but right across Europe, and practical examples of where workers who are engaged fully in their employment and with their employer generate greater and higher levels of productivity. Now that manifests itself, that engagement manifests itself in a number of ways in addition, which assist with that productivity, with bringing up productivity. The jobs themselves tend to be stable, so the worker knows they're in employment going forward and over a period of time. They are well paid. The job itself and the sector and the industry tends to see lower rates of absenteeism. It tends to see higher rates of innovation because those workers feel they have a stake, a greater stake in the business or the industry. For the employer, there are reduced supervisory costs, the improved efficiency which comes about with the improved attendance, the lack of absenteeism, the engagement. And this, interestingly, even manifests itself across traditionally low-wage sectors. So this bill doesn't present a threat to the employers. I heard reference at previous sessions of the committee to, a burden of additional cost and excessive administrative burdens been incurred. We don't see that happening here. I don't think anybody wants to see a workforce developed here which is in a worse, has access to worse terms and conditions or pay or opportunity than elsewhere on these islands or across Europe in comparable economies. The key here, the key thing about the efficiency relationship is that it's not only and can't only be top down. It has to involve the entirety of the workforce engaged in the activity of making the company successful. Because as my colleague Kevin pointed out, a successful company is successful, yes, for the employer, but it's also successful for the worker and the workers' families and the community in which they are located, and by extension society as a whole. So efficiency, well,
no, I think it like what you're setting out and what you have laid out in the document, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. So even whenever you go to small businesses where you can see that the employees are treated with respect and where people are content and they're like everyone performs better as a result, and there's benefit and people are more content. Like from your own experience, yourself, if you feel that you're being respected and you're being paid fairly and all, you don't have that particular issue that's acting as a barrier to getting on with whatever it is you're supposed to be doing. But I wonder how we as a committee can remove that negative perception or work with the business sector or anybody that has, as you say, reservations about engaging in this process to try and make the proposals as laid out in the bill the reality.
Well, I mean, I know Kevin wants to come in on this as well, but I think you've really raised an important point. And we talked earlier on about it was a bit, our door is always open. But that's absolutely key to resolving that negative perception, if that exists, is talking about it, is sitting down in a structured way and having a conversation about what's the concerns here. Well, let's talk about those concerns, let's resolve them. Because as we've said very, very clearly, we're about, obviously, first and foremost, protecting and promoting the rights of our members and working people. But as Kevin has said, and Jerry has also articulated, if the economy is not doing well, we don't have jobs. So it's in our interests and our members' interest to ensure that we have that ongoing dialogue, which is why we were so keen that co-design process, which the chair rightly interrogated earlier on, fully involve employers, and it's a pity that it didn't. But that's the way to do it.
Yeah, sorry, it's a spot on question. Yeah, even in schools, children aren't being taught about trade unions. We have this world where people don't know about trade unions. They hear about it in the media. Normally they only hear about us whenever there's a strike going on. They never hear about us in the positive things. They never hear about union learning, which I believe you've all got an invite to, the ICTU Union Learning Conference, if it hasn't come through. This has been a massive success in upskilling and reskilling workers in this country. It's done in partnership and supported by the Department for the Economy. And it's making a massive input, but people don't know about it, and we need to get it out. So any assistance you can give us, that would be greatly appreciated. To encourage employers to come and sit around the table. Now, the engagement forum is a massive step forward. It's early days, but we're having these discussions. And even when we talked about an element of the bill, there was we had a discussion around 0 hours contract and another part, but we were able to point out some of the problems, and we were able to talk about some of the solutions. So we're on this is a cultural change. It's going to be a long process. Like this bill, the contents of this bill, should it pass, it's not going to come in like that, bang, day one, and we're all sitting, there's changes, massive changes. It's going to take a long time to develop and introduce these things to win trust and confidence with employers, and to build the trust and confidence between employees and employers, because that's where the productivity gain comes from. That if you have a workforce that knows it's secure in its employment, it will be more innovative, because it won't fear that the innovation that it introduces is going to lead to job losses. It's that sort of thing. It's putting it together. In fact, back in 2009, the CBI, the government, and the TUC carried out research about the effectiveness of reps, and what they're saying, I'll quote very quickly, is union representatives can help articulate the views and ideas of the workforce, improve working practices, workplace performance, lower recruitment costs and a loss of skills, and can result in raised employee motivation, productivity, leading in turn to reduce staff turnover. So that's even from the British government. I've talked about OECD, IMF. We're trying to say this is a chance for Northern Ireland to do something different. We've tried the insecure route from the 90s, which has now mushroomed and caused poverty. It's caused in-work poverty. It's caused all sorts of problems in society. We said we need to try a new way, try something different.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, thanks, Chairman.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks to you all for your presentation. It's very useful, and it's important to hear all voices that are involved in this consultation. So in page 3 of your submission to us, you stated that the consultation process on the Good Jobs Bill you consider to be one of the most comprehensive and active consultations that you have been engaged with. We heard back in January, we heard from the Northern Ireland Chamber and some of the employers who felt that actually, in terms of the consultation, they felt that it was very challenging given when the consultation went out, given all of the challenges that the employers face. That obviously there's an issue in terms of time and being able to provide a comprehensive response, and that's on top of what the chair has said around the fact that actually there's not many many of the areas did not actually have proposals, so they didn't know actually what they were responding to. So there seems to be a huge gap between what you say as it being a really comprehensive and active consultation to what employers are saying. So could you maybe talk us through a bit more in terms of your engagement? What do you mean by active? Maybe outline, I know you've had a number of meetings with the Minister. Could you outline the extent of those? Have you met with the Minister since this? Just to get a feel for why there's such a disparity between what employers are saying and what yourselves are saying.
Well, I'll begin. We're an organisation, an umbrella organisation, and in Northern Ireland here we encompass 34 trade unions, 200,000 odd people. What we did was we actively sought the views of those trade unions, and we encouraged those trade unions to go and talk to their members. So we had views being transmitted to us across the most, I'm not saying all 34 contributed, the most did, and we were getting it from the private sector and the public sector. We did that. We organised events, as did the business community. So we could share our information, invited the department and others to do so too. So there was all of that. We met with the Minister on 2 occasions, I believe. That was outside of the engagement forum. He was there once. So we had 3 interactions with the Minister directly on the bill, if you like. We spent a huge amount of time talking to people that we felt had particular insights to bring to the piece. The fact that the consultation took place over the summer is, as my colleague Kevin pointed out earlier, nothing particularly new in this area of work. The 2014 piece, indeed the 2013, as well, piece. Also, that consultation, I think, kicked off in June. The 2013 consultation kicked off in June. So, there wasn't for us. Yes, it was difficult, but it wasn't insurmountable. And we're a very small organisation. There are 5 of us here today, but on a daily basis, there are 9 of us in total who work for ICTU. So we got it done, and we pulled it together. Now, we would have liked very much an opportunity to engage more fully with business and industry. We did have the opportunity to speak to a number of individuals. Could we have spoken to more? Yes, we could have. What we were attempting to do in the consultation was bring people round to the view that the culture change which has been referred to is a necessary thing, and that's the central theme of what we were trying to do. What we had to sort of convince some people of was that we're not the enemy here. And our interests, the interests of the trade union movement, are not a million miles away from the interests of business and industry, because we both want the same thing. We want that successful economy. We want to contribute to that successful economy, but we want the people that we represent to have a voice in how that evolves, and we want to see them rewarded and acknowledged for the efforts that they put in fully as well. Kevin, you might want to add something.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. It is an interesting point. But maybe just first of all, as Jerry mentioned, 19 of the 31 proposals are catch-up. They were consulted on across the water when they were being introduced, and the CBI, FSB, the sister organisations of bodies here, were consulted on the time. It's public knowledge. We knew what was there. Lots of the employer-focused law firms have detailed information on their websites where these consultations were going on. We knew it was coming. You know, of the other 12 proposals, they were in the Labour Party manifesto, which was launched in 2021. An engagement again with the sister organisations of the CBI, FSB, had been engaging with Labour from then. Then it was reintroduced in a revised version in 2024. Everybody knew when the minister made the announcement what was going to be in this bill, and it had been, you know, there had been a lot of work done on it. Now, we had, as I mentioned, employer-focused law firms here as well. From the get-go, had all details, had broken down what was possibly in the bill and what concerns there could be for employers and stuff like that. So it was really well known about. Jerry mentioned we started the consultation process on the 26th of February with the Department for the Economy. We understand the employers did around the same time as well. You know, so and we mentioned about the LRA. So the public consultation started on the 1st of July. So there was an informal verbal consultation process from DFE kicked it off. Then there's a formal written, which is not unusual. And it started on the 1st of July, ran to the 30th of September. You could actually argue that, in fact, it's reasonable to argue that the consultation period ran for 31 weeks. If you take it from when the department commenced consultation to the 30th of September, or you could take it as 25 weeks from when the department gave the presentation to the engagement forum, which had all the details, had all the heads in it. So it's been quite an extensive consultation, as I say, and we all knew what was in it. But there's, you know, employers and business organisations were also running events throughout the summer, and legal law firms that focus towards solicitors were running events. You could just check on the internet. There's loads of them that were taking place on the bill. Then you had the Department for the Economy ran about 5 events, 5 seminars, one from what was on good jobs, which we were focused into, all aimed at the employers. So, and as we said, the previous consultations ran over the summer as well. The 0 hours contracts, the employment law review, massive one. There was a trade union one on blacklisting as well, ran over the summer. I'm sick of giving up my summer holidays doing consultation responses. But you know what I mean? So it's more or less, you know, it's hard to see how people are saying that there wasn't the time to consult on it, you know.
No, and that is useful because it is important, as I say, that we do hear your view. We've heard a different view, obviously, from the employers, and we have to take account of all of that. I have to say, concerns that the business community feel that way, and we have to interrogate as to. Yes. You know, and that's not for you to answer for, that is for the department to answer for, and that's something we have to interrogate with them. And theme C appears to be where many of the issues appear to be. Certainly, having read through some of the initial feedback that we've received, that appears to be a concern and a real difference of opinion. You know, one of those areas being the in relation to the threshold to trigger formal union recognition, you know, and also another area was the digital right to access employees, and not just physically in the workplace as well. Could you maybe just, in terms of the threshold for triggering union recognition, you can understand that there may be concern out there among the business community, not in terms of wanting workers not to have rights or entitlements. I think it's just a fear that all of the pressures that are ongoing at this minute in time, what we don't want to see is additional burdens, additional challenges that actually could harm business and ultimately harm employees as well.
Thanks for that. The central part, or the central theme for us around that voice and representation piece is to facilitate good industrial relations. In order to do that, we believe that that's best achieved by people represented in a structured fashion, and trade unions present the best vehicle for doing that. We need, as trade unions, then access to the workforce. The workforce itself can decide whether they wish to join or not join. But they are joining. Well, there's 200,000 of them already in trade unions. But I think your point is partly around the fact that our economy is made up of so many small
Yes.
businesses,
Yeah.
and I understand there's I understand their concerns. I don't share those concerns, and I think that there is a halfway house to be had here, and that halfway house is around sectoral collective bargaining. So if we look at some, there are areas of the economy where it would be possible to reach agreements across a sector. There are examples of this already in place. We have an agricultural wages board. That is a sectoral collective bargaining arrangement, one that has been in place since Northern Ireland came into being, in effect. And it worked quite well over all of that period of time. There are more modern examples, or more recent examples, if you like, that we could lean into, like the Retail Forum in Scotland, which is a tripartite arrangement which the Scottish Government established between the retail sector, the employers, the trade unions and themselves, and indeed, well, tripartite is not quite accurate. The local councils are involved there too. That mechanism allows for the setting of terms and conditions and wages across that entire retail sector in Scotland, but it also allows for so much more. It allows for them to address, issues around, for example, their transition to the green economy, for one. So it has potential to do other things. So there are other examples here. My colleague here might want to talk about.
Yeah, and just to pick up on Jerry's point about sectoral arrangements. So it is not sectoral collective bargaining, but we do have an approach at the moment in terms of social care, where previously under Minister Swan, when he was in post in the Department of Health, and now under Minister Nesbitt, there is a social care fair work forum. Because if we look at social care as a sector, you have a sector in which you have a significant proportion of the adult social care workforce who are working for private companies, or in some cases social enterprises or community voluntary sector organisations, pardon me, but they're providing a service effectively that has been commissioned or procured through the Health and Social Care Trusts, and that's a very significant proportion of the workforce, and that extends into many community voluntary sector organisations in which we would have members as well. So I do think in terms of the committee's consideration of this bill, I think it shouldn't necessarily have a sort of a sharp public-private divide. There's obviously much greater levels of collective bargaining for public sector employees, and we have well-established structures to do that. They're not without their challenges, but we have a structure there to give the worker voice and representation across a whole range of areas. An area like social care, which the state is effectively procuring and is being delivered as a public service, is an area in which we need to give real attention as to how we ensure worker voice and representation, not only to enhance their rights and give them more security in their employment and better wages and better terms and conditions, but also to actually ensure we have a stable service there. And employers have recognised that. So that Fair Work Forum has done quite good work in terms of bringing together differing voices from the employer side, from the Department of Health and the trusts, and from trade unions, and actually having a much more comprehensive approach to looking at the issue of pay and terms and conditions. And it's at the moment what we're focusing on is how we can make that a real living wage sector. And the Minister has intimated that that is something he would like to do in this year and is willing to offer some funding toward. So that's an example, I think, of, to go to Jerry's point, of how we can look at things on a sectoral basis. In terms of my own union, when we engage with employers in an area like social care, we look for voluntary recognition. We don't immediately pursue the statutory route, because we want to build that voluntary partnership and that voluntary dialogue with the employer, and it allows us the ability to understand their issues and their challenges, and also to convey our perspective as well. So I think that's something that also needs to be borne in mind in this discussion too.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Sorry, no, I just wanted to add in, because I come from an education background, and I was just thinking about the what we were talking about. I mean, we've got obviously all sorts of workplaces scattered around everywhere, small, huge, whatever. We've got a range of employers, we've got a range of employing authorities, we've got the department, we've got a range of trade unions as well. And it makes actually those collective bargaining processes and that structure that we have, and I admit it's public sector, and I also will acknowledge the fact that our teachers culturally will join unions. They will join unions. And for a number of years things ticked along nicely, but now we are seeing the benefit in recent times of having that kind of structure. And it's nothing to fear. We are able to bring all of those employer representatives round the table very quickly, all of those trade unions round the table, to try to resolve something that benefits the entire profession. And the profession want the thing resolved, and they want to be able to work in a way that their concern is the children in their care. And we're all round that table to try to deliver a common goal. And it's good structures. People can come together, they can come together and respond very quickly to an issue, and we can look for a resolution that suits everybody. So it's not something to fear from our point of view. And many of our teachers, perhaps in a different cultural setting, maybe wouldn't tend to come to trade unions, but now they can see it's coming into focus, and it has done over the last couple of years, the benefits for them and being able to have a voice, being able to shape their job, being able to raise their concerns, and the benefits that the employers are hearing that firsthand, and we're able to reach a resolution together.
Thank you. Thanks.
Good morning to the panel, and thank you for coming to committee today. And I think, when employers and employees work together, collaborate together, innovate together, resolve issues together, outcomes are always better, whether that's profitability or productivity or reducing economic inactivity. So it's really, really important. This good job build is for employers and employees, and it's for everyone really. And it's not, there is definitely no way it should be in conflict with either or. I would like to just maybe ask, it's really maybe in the back of the last question a wee bit, there are many, many small, really good small employers. And I want to know how best can they be supported when it comes to the provisions of the voice and representation aspects of the legislation. You touched on it. There's a variety of it. Like, it's about, is it about regulations? Is it about guidance? Or is it about enforcement? And I think probably the latter is what scares small employers in relation to their duty as well. So if you could maybe talk a little bit about how you see this working for small employers in particular.
Well, thank you, Sinead. I don't think anybody should be frightened here. The only people who need to be frightened here are those unscrupulous employers who are seeking to exploit workforce, and we believe that those are few and far, very few in number. But the reality is we have an economy here where, depending on who you talk to, upwards of 80% of the companies are small companies. We would suggest that a more effective approach for a lot of those companies is aligned to what's contained in this bill. And I'm talking about profitability for them, because there are significant cost savings to be had here. Cost savings around, the reaching of collective agreements to do with employment matters, to do with terms and conditions. Those cost savings, would assist greatly with the effective and efficient functioning of those companies. So, if we could reach an agreement, for example, in hospitality on, terms and conditions of employment across the piece, what that would do would provide stability and certainty for employers and workers. It would also ensure that the unscrupulous employer couldn't undercut his colleagues. It would be to the benefit of the sector as a whole. Kevin, maybe you want to pick up on what
I think it's hitting the point, Jerry, and it's back to the point of trust that small and micro businesses may have a fear of trade unions coming in, that they're going to somehow disrupt the dialogue that they have directly with their workers. That is not the case at all. And it's about us finding the opportunities to talk to small businesses to say, look, this is the benefits of a trade union. It does not disrupt in any way your direct lines of communication with employees. There's key issues on contract and things like that we'll talk about. We will all, but the day-to-day workings, we're about building the trust, giving the security and dealing with the industrial relations issues. Or if a company gets into a genuine business situation, the expertise of the trade unions can come in rather than a knee-jerk reaction of switching for redundancy, saying, we could be coming in and saying, have you thought about doing this? It's the benefit that we can bring to small micro businesses is really important. But in terms of the possibility of having, we are calling actually for the removal of the 21 minimum for recognition, because for exactly the point we're making, if people get to understand what trade unions, what value they can bring, then there shouldn't be any fear to it. We can't have a situation where people's rights to join a trade union, including their human rights and their legal rights to join a trade union, be represented a trade union, are said, no, because you're in a small business, you don't have the right to do that. But even if you're in a small micro business, you're still potentially subject to difficulties inside that workplace. There are still problems. You need to be represented by a trade union, as well as, so you've got that side for giving the rights to the employees, but also the benefits to the employer himself. Jerry talked about sectoral collective bargaining. If we're doing things, by the way, sectoral collective bargaining, what we're calling for in this document is simply for the department to look at sectoral collective bargaining and start to promote it, find ways to bring employers and trade unions together to look at sectoral collective bargaining and see the benefits of it. Put an action plan in place and review it. We're not calling for any legislative setting up of structures of sectoral collective bargaining, because we know it's a process we're involved in, winning the trust of the employers. That's what we're looking for in this, around that. But if we have sectoral collective bargaining in any particular sector, you pick the sector where there's a problem, because that's the best to start with, where we can work from ways around problems. If we have these agreements, like on minimum wages, minimum terms and conditions, but also about skills, apprenticeships and stuff like that, it means that the smaller firms don't have to engage human resources to do it. There's a cost saving them straight away. They can feed into this and benefit from the policies and ideas that are coming down through a sectoral approach. So it's really a win-win,
Yeah, and thank you for that, Kevin. And I should have said to the chair earlier on, just when you were speaking, I should have made a declaration of interest. I have been a member of the trade union for many years, and I understand and know the value of it. So in your briefing, you rightly note the evidence shows a link between economic inactivity and job quality. Do you share my concern that the Department for Communities has a real big role to play in relation to economic inactivity, and there needs to be a synergy between these two departments, the Department for Economy and the Department for Communities, in order to drive quality jobs in relation to that economic inactivity piece? If anybody would like to speak to that.
I'll maybe just very quickly come in, and then John Patrick. We do agree with you, Sinead, that the Department for Communities has a big role to play in relation to economic inactivity, and particularly around the area of poverty. And I know that John Patrick in particular has been very involved in the pushing for the anti-poverty strategy to be delivered, but there are other social inclusion strategies which the Department for Communities leads on, and that includes the gender equality strategy and others, and it's extremely important that those are clearly linked to the Good Jobs agenda, and I think that's an important point that you make. John Patrick, do
Yeah,
you want to?
I'll maybe just say a little bit more about the anti-poverty strategy, if I may, Sinead, because I'd agree with your point that I think this bill should not necessarily just be seen through the lens of it's a bill from the Department for the Economy. It should be an executive priority because it should link to the other executive priorities that we would encourage the executive to take forward, which would be the anti-poverty strategy and the social inclusion strategies. I represented Congress, pardon me, in the co-design process for the anti-poverty strategy that was during the last executive mandate, and some of the key issues we would have raised through that process would have been the connection between good quality jobs, higher wages and security of hours, and the access to be able to collectively bargain through your trade union, and how that is a measure to combat poverty, because we know when we look at the statistics that are produced around poverty, whilst being in a job reduces your risk of being in poverty, we know a significant proportion of those who are in poverty are of working age and they're in a family where at least one adult works. So there is really a connection there, as colleagues have already articulated, between the need to tackle poverty and the need to improve the quality of jobs, and to look at issues like low pay, like precarious working, and also to look at the issues such as childcare that I know Claire's done an awful lot of work on behalf of Congress, and the issues around gender disparities and the particular issues that affect young people in the labour market as well. So we very much see this as being all part of the same piece. Certainly from a Unison perspective, and I know from a Congress perspective, when we submitted to the executive's overall consultation on the programme for government, these would have been the kind of pillars we would have been pointing toward. And I think it's one of the reasons why we're so keen to see this legislation progressed in this mandate, to try and tie these issues together.
And if I just might add one sentence to it, what this bill presents a really good opportunity for the executive and the assembly to demonstrate, that productive work can be done, and it opens the door to further productive work then right across the economy.
Yeah. And I suppose regional balance is very close to my heart, and we have discussed previously at the committee the fact that the border regions in particular have real challenges around good jobs. So what, as an all-island organisation, what further work can be done in this space?
Well, first of all, we know that you're bringing a private members bill. We'd be happy to support that in the first instance. But we see this bill coming from the Department for the Economy as part of a suite of policies. So the department itself has brought forward a number of policies around, addressing regional disparity, for example. The city deals piece as well, seeking to move that on. So there's all of that. We also very much would support ongoing efforts to try and address the funding shortfalls across the piece. But this bill has the potential to create a dynamic within the workforce and within the economy, which, would ripple across all of this place in which we live and benefit everyone. But it's very much one of a suite of policies. I think, as my colleagues have already pointed out, it has to link up to other executive priorities and has to be taken forward like that. The bill on its own would be a very positive thing, but it needs to be part of a broader approach.
Could I just come in on that?
Just going to say,
Sorry.
and it's important, Sinead, and your bill, and it's useful to get that on the record. But our discussion here today is in relation to the minister's proposed bill, and there's still over half the committee who are keen to have their say on it. So, do you have any other questions about the response to the bill at this stage, Sinead?
No, it was actually about good jobs,
Yeah.
because good jobs in terms of the border regions too, because there is a particular about growth, a particular aspect about growth and those areas as well. So I wanted to kind of touch in on
would have
that.
probably made a harsher ruling much earlier than I did. Padraig? But
Thanks, Chair. Thanks. Pardon?
I just saying I applaud Sinead's tenacity to try and get her bill mentioned when we're
Oh,
talking about
sorry.
another bill.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Chair, and thanks to the committee for their presentation today. I mean, really useful, really good points put forward. And I think, look, I just wanted to start firstly by mentioning, I suppose, in the context of this, that there is a strike by Irish language staff right across Ireland, and I think it's important that we put on record our support and our solidarity for them in a declaring interest, because a family member is employed through Forest na Gaeilge on that. But just returning to, I suppose, the basis of your presentation, the productivity stuff has been covered well. It's an area that I suppose I've looked into in quite a lot of detail. And I think you touched on the key point on it, which is that I suppose quite often productivity and good employment rates have been seen as mutually exclusive. And we actually recognise that they're actually integral to each other. Better workers' rights, better management style, better outcomes for everyone. So I won't ask any questions on that because I think it's been covered in great detail already. But I am keen to get a better understanding of, firstly, in terms of the economically inactive, I suppose specifically, how can they be included in this consultation? What role do you feel that you have in that? What role do you feel the bill has in that? And is there anything additional that can be put in to support actually getting as many people as possible into the workforce and making it accessible for all?
Thanks very much for that. I'll maybe kick off, Padraig, and thanks for the question. And then maybe Jackie might want to come in and add some details to that. I think it's very important that we link economic inactivity or economic activity to job quality. And we totally agree with what you've said. I think if we look at the rate of economic inactivity in Northern Ireland, we all know it's high. Of course, there are people who are economically inactive for very normal reasons, such as childcare. They're classified as economically inactive, even if they're not, or they're studying, for example. But there are many more we know who actually want to enter the workforce and want to enter the labour market. But they need a job that's going to be able to balance the demands that they have at home with their work. So if we look maybe at carers, we know that there are around 220,000 carers in Northern Ireland today, many of whom have very pressing unpaid care responsibilities. But when asked, and I know that Carers UK and Carers NI have done a lot of work on this, when asked, 1 in 3 of those people actually say, well, yeah, I would actually like to go back to work. I would like a job, but I need a job where I'm able to balance my caring responsibilities with work. So I need to be able to avail of, for example, flexible working arrangements. And most, maybe even more importantly, I need to be able to have good quality carers leave available to me. And for us, and the Chair asked very early on in the discussion what else was missing from the bill, I think we would definitely say that the work-life balance arrangements proposed within the bill are catch-up with GB. We have recommended that the Department for the Economy actually propose an in-depth review and consultation of all these arrangements. It's our position that carers leave should be paid. We believe that if carers are going to be able to enter the workforce, that's a good question. We think that carers leave, like maternity, paternity and other parental leave, should be covered by the state. This is a social security issue, and everybody should pay and everybody should benefit. So those are the sorts of issues, Padraig, that we see within the bill has a possibility of making an impact on economic inactivity, but we need to be clear that there need to be strong measures there and those need to be properly remunerated.
Yeah, if I could just, thanks Chair, if I could just add to that, like 11.9% of our working population are economically inactive due to sickness and disability. There's a much larger number in total, but that's down to sickness and disability. And many of them would also be keen to be in the workplace. We traditionally have got the lowest rate of employment of people, of the working population with disabilities, because we don't have the support in the workplaces and we don't have the understanding and awareness in order to put reasonable adjustments in to have those people in work. And the problem with that is that the inactivity in itself actually starts to compound the issue, particularly whenever you're looking in the area of sickness in terms of mental health. The inactivity actually impacts on mental health and we've a spiral downwards. So we really need, when we're talking about good jobs as well, to ensure that we are making sure that if there are supports which are required within a workplace to enable somebody to access the workplace or actually to stay in the job once, if a disability is developed whenever they're in the work, we need to do that. And we also need to remember as well our older population, our older working population. We have an ageing population here, and very often retirement age for profession does not match up with state pension age, if you like. And we have got a gap in there where we have maybe a lack of training or upskilling. You have a number of people out there who would be providing stability and experience and commitment to workplaces who aren't maybe getting the same opportunities. So we've a lot of things that we need to think about, and it's back to that working between departments in order to build some of that capacity, deliver those job opportunities and good jobs, and get some of those people back into work.
And it's out with this bill, but the issue of childcare has been raised.
Yeah.
And I mean, clearly that's something that needs to be an executive priority as well if we're talking about getting people who are economically inactive back into work. We need those supports, we need those arrangements in place.
Well, thanks for that response. And I mean, I totally agree with that. And I think that what you've mentioned in terms of a suite of legislation is vital, because this is about connecting pieces, connecting departments. I sit in the PAC committee, and one of the things we hear all the time is about siloed working in government departments. And I think that this offers a good opportunity to actually, well, as you mentioned, around childcare, around carers leave, and a range of other issues supporting older people, for example. And Chair, sorry, I have another interest to declare just in the back of that comment, is that the work-life balance and carers leave bill was a former private member's bill of both myself and my colleague Martina Anderson. So just really happy to see it progress and obviously adopted under this legislation. Just the last point for me is you've mentioned carers. Carers NI is such a fantastic representative body and organisation. Obviously, your members through the various trade unions have fantastic support. And I suppose that collegiate effort right across the board to bring this forward. But like, for example, when I was at university, I worked in a lot of low paid, I suppose precarious contracts where it was 0 hours contract. You didn't have that support or sustainability in the workforce as well. I'm keen to get, I suppose, your opinion and touch on your expertise on this. How do we ensure that the Good Jobs Bill works for those people? I mean, there are obviously policies and specific strategies that are designed to do that, but how do we actually engage them in the process of designing the bill, of bringing forward any changes which need to be there now to work for them, and which parts of the bill do you feel will work best for those people who currently don't have a representative body?
Apologies, Patrick, I'm not really sure I'm grasping exactly the question that you're asking us, but we think that the bill...
And sorry, I went off on a bit of a long-winded way of explaining it there. So obviously, people who are on a trade union have your support and your representation. Carers have the representation from Carers NI. People who are in short-term precarious contracts who don't have that trade union representation or a representative body, how do you feel as a committee the department should be advised to reach them and to ensure that they're best represented?
Well, the trade unions do represent precarious employees, so we do reach out, we try our best. Like, there's a lot of unions, like the shop workers union will have a lot of 0 hours contracts workers within it, and there's other unions. So we do, and we're conscious in our 132-page response, we are conscious to be looking at ways to bring economically inactive people into the economy, but also our key point is about insecurity. in the workplace. And the whole thrust of what we're saying is to remove that insecurity, to find ways that benefit the employee and benefit the employer, but keep security and good jobs in the centre of it. So we have heavily focused on the insecure in our response. It is always very difficult, you know, even for the department. The LRA have also been involved in trying to promote awareness of employment rights. I think it really needs to go back to schools. We have careers advice and all sorts of different citizenship advice, but why aren't people told about trade unions and employment rights? We can't all be entrepreneurs, you know what I mean? Somebody's going to have to work at the end of the day. We need to prepare young people for the world of work as well. So getting in at that early, getting them to understand about trade unions, about employment rights and things like that would be a great step forward, I think, you know.
Okay, thank you, Padraig. Kate.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much. I'm not going to ask questions for the sake of questions because so much has already been covered. Just a few things that are sitting with me. The first is I really welcome your presentation and your briefing and just the work that you're doing in general, and that message about economic inactivity and productivity linked to poor job quality I think has been heard really clearly today, and that cultural change is really needed. And I think it's been really positive to hear that the engagement forum is working really well. I don't fully understand why the co-design didn't work the way it was intended. Is that something that we should be worried about? Is my first question.
Well, Jerry, do you want to comment on that?
Well,
I don't think that's something that we can necessarily answer, if I could say that. I mean, I think our concern centred around the hope that we were going to be sitting down with the department and the employer representatives and ourselves. That, unfortunately, didn't happen out with of the engagement forum. It did happen within that, but it didn't happen outside of that.
My understanding was that there were kind of separate sessions kind of mediated,
yes.
but I wasn't aware that the intention had been that it would be collective at the beginning. I had assumed that it was always the intention was going to be separate. So it's interesting to know that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess, you know, I'm not entirely sure why that didn't happen. Certainly we were very open to that.
Okay.
Even if there had been maybe a process of some separate engagement and some engagement collaboratively, that we feel would have worked better.
Okay. And that's something I can pick up with the officials.
I just feel that if it had worked better, it would have sent a very clear signal very early in this process about that culture change.
Yeah.
Well,
that's why I'm asking the question, because this is a massive piece of legislation, and the whole point is that we all have to work well together to make it work. So if this legislation is coming forward and that was the tone that was set at the beginning, I'm just worried how much we should be worried about that, you know.
No, I think we've moved beyond it.
Okay, good.
Just very quickly, it's not over. You know what I mean? We're only at this. The consultation is just finished.
Yes.
We're, you know, then it's going to be taken, I believe, to the executive. Whenever we have plenty of time to do this, and as it moves into the more detail, I'm sure there will be more engagement. Our door's open. We will keep knocking the employers' doors. The engagements forum there. This process isn't done. And again, as I mentioned, even if the bill is passed, there is still going to be, before things are actually implemented in the workplace, there's going to be consultation working around. So I don't see this as...
Okay, no, that's reassuring to hear. Thank you. I always talk about childcare and I always talk about carers, so I'm glad that this has been covered already. But it wasn't expressly mentioned in your briefing, and it's not really that clear within the bill. So in terms of childcare, which I think is such a massive issue, especially right now, and in terms of access to a good job, you know, you can't, so many people leaving the workforce, particularly women, so there's a gender element to it. How do you think this bill, and I guess, Claire, because you've done the most work on this, how do you think this bill is going to help with the childcare crisis that people are experiencing right now?
Well, I mean, I suppose it's a complicated question and it's not an easy answer, you know, because how many years, I mean, I've been in this job longer than I care to admit, and we're still talking about childcare. So it is a difficult issue. It's one that should have been solved by now, I think. This bill is an employment rights bill. I think it's important for us to remember that. It is a big bill already. It's an important bill, so it can't cover everything. And I think that kind of collaborative approach that we talked about earlier on is something that we're going to have to look at within departments and who has responsibility for different briefs. However, I do think it's important to remember that there are other work-life balance arrangements which assist with balancing home and work life. And those are covered, albeit in a maybe more limited way, in the bills. So access to flexible working arrangements, obviously, paternity leave. I mean, one of the things that we certainly discussed with the department, which is not covered by the bill, is parental leave. You know, we would argue that that's a significant gap at the moment. And I think our main recommendation within our consultation response was around the pressing need to actually sit down and review the whole suite of work-life balance arrangements, including provision of accessible and affordable childcare. And, you know, we've recommended that isn't delayed. Let's get on with that. Let's sit down with the interested parties, that's trade unions, that's employers, that's the department themselves, and other stakeholders as well obviously have a key role to play in that. So
and I completely agree with you, and parental leave I think is massively important. And I think at one stage we were actually leading, you know, in terms of a lot of some of our employment legislation. How closely are you looking at what's happening at GB in relation to this?
Yes, well, I was just about to say, of course, we know that GB are looking to review parental leave, and the government have committed to doing that. So we're working quite closely with our colleagues in the TUC and the other trade union centres. And again, I suppose one thing we would say, we're playing catch up here, but we don't want to be left behind again. So, you know, this, as Jerry said at the outset, we just don't want parity. We want parity plus.
Yeah.
So.
And I wonder if I might just come in on your specific question, Kate, about how this bill could help maybe unlock the wider issue of childcare. I mean, from a Congress perspective, you know, we rightly recognise, and I say it as a parent myself, childcare costs are a significant burden on people. They're a significant barrier to people being able to access work and stay in work. And we would view it both from the perspective of our membership or employed in other aspects of public services, say, and you need access to high quality childcare, but we also look at it through the lens of the childcare workforce. And it's a workforce which, from I believe the research we did previously, Claire, through Congress, it's not a workforce which there's high levels of collective bargaining. It's not it's a workforce in which there are issues around low pay at times. It's an issue in which we understand providers operate on the basis of quite low margins, by and large. But it's an area in which it's a bit like I mentioned earlier, not having such a sharp public-private divide. It's an area in which there's clearly a need for greater intervention, state investment intervention, but we don't want to create a further problem of a workforce which already has issues being having further pressures applied to it through how that is done. So it's actually a good example maybe of a sector where you would need that greater social dialogue between employer organisations, trade unions as representatives of the workforce, greater access to the workplace in order to unionise workplaces, and then the state, which is sort of setting, if you like, a lot of the terms of support and engagement that people should have around this. So it's maybe that's something the bill can help to facilitate. It doesn't solve the problem in its entirety, but it maybe goes back to that wider point of why the bill should be significant for other pieces that the executive should be prioritising.
That's such a useful point, and one that hasn't been made to me so far in this context. So thank you so much. They're doing some of the most precious work in our economy and should be valued accordingly.
Absolutely.
And I should declare an interest that like in a couple of weeks is more relevant to me. Okay. Thank you very much.
David.
Thank you as well for coming in. You've covered an awful lot. I'm going to pick up a couple of wee things that's been said, but I totally agree. Productivity is the issue in our economy, and if we can bring those good jobs and raise the standard of employee or workers' rights, then we can try and address that. And I totally agree with that. The bit just I want to tease out and back to the co-design piece. You've talked about fear. There quite a few times you've mentioned fear within the business community there, and you've talked about being prepared to sit down and discuss, and you've talked you'd like more time to discuss in the business community weren't there. What I don't understand is why that hasn't happened to date, outside of this, you know, the official sort of co-design group. Why have you not been proactive to do that, or have you been proactive to try and meet and discuss and to take those, relieve those fears, and to try and chat through the issues?
The specific question was about co-design, the co-design process. So that's our comments were within that particular context. But Jerry might want to comment on the broader points.
On the broader point, there has been a number of engagements, you know. But you're asking about us reaching out.
Both. Yes. It's two ways. It's two.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there were a number of third-party interventions. That's calling you right. So we had the forum, for example. There were a number of presentations, indeed, by some of the business organisations which we attended as well, and we were able to, you know, address points from the floor in some of those, but no sitting down formally. That is something that we're going to pick up on at this point. We're at a stage here where I believe the minister will bring a paper to the executive. Being optimists, we believe that we will proceed to a drafting stage on the other side of that. I think it would be important that when an actual bill is presented, that the employers and the trade unions in particular and the department can sit down. It would certainly make the work of this committee a lot easier if you know, we can address any issues around interpretation or whatever in advance of that taking place. So I take your point. We could do more. I'm sure we could all do more, but we're certainly prepared to play our part.
If we had this discussion and it had been the employers, I would have been asking exactly the same question. It's the reverse of that. Yes. Whenever you've got two sides or two different coming from two different point of views, probably coming to thing, everybody's looking to achieve the same thing. Absolutely. So the bit I'm trying to get is, I don't understand why there hasn't been proactivity on either side to go, listen, can we talk this through and relieve a lot of the fears you're talking about, and really,
And I think it wouldn't be completely fair to say there hasn't been you know, engagement, because we have had the engagement forum facilitated by the Labour Relations Agency, which brings together representatives of employers and business and ourselves in a structured way to have that structured engagement. And that has included, as Kevin outlined earlier on, presentations on the bill on 2 occasions maybe, or 3 occasions formally. So we have that.
Okay, that's reassuring. Yeah, no, that's reassuring. The other bit, just to pick up quickly, it was around the access to business and small micro business, and you touched on this. You raised hospitality as a kind of example of collective thing. I'm just trying to work out how that would work in practice. So how does that, if I have a small village pub in name the village, doesn't matter, and you have, you know, 10, 11, 12 employees, which every small bit, and they're quite it's family orientated, and it's how does that work? Where's that collective? How would that function in day-to-day life, if you like, for those employees?
Well, the mechanism I'd be proposing, or I'm suggesting, I'm not proposing anything, I'm suggesting that the sectoral collective bargaining mechanism would be a sort of tripartite arrangement. So you had the employer, the pub owner, the trade union, and the local administrative unit, whether that be, in the case you're talking about, a council, or more probably the Department for the Economy or tourism, or whoever looks after pubs. I only use them, I don't know how they function. the
I have a habit of that too. So.
But it would be a tripartite arrangement. What you'd be seeking to do. So your little pub is in South Antrim, right?
I'm in Lagan Valley, so you
Well,
can go to
well,
South Antrim.
For the sake of argument, it's in South Antrim. So what you would do would be you'd be trying to organise all of the publicans in the area coming together, sitting down and identifying what their issues are. Trade unions the same, and then working out, facilitated by the department, the council, whoever, working out, what, now I'm doing this at a micro level, but you would do it at, it's more likely to work at a whole of the north level.
So then who would that be? So this is the bit of how this out works. So I get the principle, I get the principle, but it's how that would actually work whenever you bring it down to a
You would
very
reach an
small-
agreement, reach agreement on paying conditions for that sector, which would apply to the whole of the north, and then people would adjust to that minimum standard.
Who does that agree? What I'm trying to get at is how does a small business that has a pub in Moira or in Hillsborough, so how do they have, where would, they're not part of that negotiation? Is that, are you talking about the body like Hospitality Ulster then doing that for the sector? Or how, I just don't know how that works.
That could be how it would work.
Yeah.
Or they could develop a different mechanism for themselves.
Yeah.
I think potentially, if we could add to the discussion, it's possibly potentially easier to see a pathway through it where the state has a more active role. And this goes back to the points I made earlier around a sector like social care, say.
I understand that when the state is effectively the employer at the very top of it. That's the bit I totally get that when the state is basically outsourcing to a private company or to a small range of private companies to deliver services for the state. So that fundamentally the money originates and the employer is back, or the original source of the money for the funding is from the state. I understand, I totally get that, totally appreciate that. It's whenever you take that down in outside of the state, and when you take that down to, and it was when you mentioned hospitality, I could, it doesn't matter the sector, but if you take that down to the local pub, it's how that actually then works out. Whenever, if I think of mine, I think of various others, a lot of those are family members. So they're all people, quite a few of the family will work in that, or I can't see how where the negotiation is there, or where the...
It might also go back, just in that scenario you're positing, to having a suite of options. So we mentioned earlier, we would, generally as trade unions, we seek voluntary recognition with employers in the first instance. So a sectoral approach is an approach that, and not to rabbit on about social care, but just the area probably have the most recent experience in, where we have an area where we have an issue around the ability to engage between employers, trade unions, and then you have the state having that role in terms of the commissioner of the service. But the preferable instance, I would suggest, for most trade unions would be to have voluntary recognition with an employer or a group of employers, and you can set pay and terms and conditions in that collective way. I think what Jerry's talking about is setting certain minimum standards.
This is the point I'm getting at, though, because there isn't that sector to negotiate. That's the bit I'm saying. There isn't that. So you've got a range of micro businesses, right? I just used hospitality because that's the one you said, but you've a range of micro businesses there with 10 employees, say. How they don't have a sector to negotiate. So where does that come? Where's that coming from?
I think that's an important issue, but I'm not sure we're going to get to the bottom of it on this one. Have you any other?
No, that's me. That's
Diana.
Very quickly, because I know it's been a fascinating conversation. It's very good to hear your views, and I know we've well overrun on time, but it's very, very important. I just want to shift it entirely on its head. You've talked about unscrupulous employers, and tone and language is really important. That's contained in the document. What about unscrupulous employees? Because you are proposing widening membership of the trade unions to protect good jobs, which is important, to protect workers' rights, absolutely. But how do you address those people who may be perceived as disruptive or unscrupulous in the workplace, just by nature of, maybe attitudinal behaviours, And you may not have them currently as trades union members, but how do you propose to address that they're brought into a formalised trade union, whereas before they would never have been part of that? I do represent a small business sector, in Fermanagh, South Tyrone, and there are, as David has said, forgot David's name, as David said. Sorry, David. And there are many businesses, 10 to 12. So it's just that sort of step change there.
It'll make no difference. If they're a trade union member or not a trade union member, if there is a problem with the employee, and even if you have day one rights for all workers from unfair dismissal, which is probably what you were getting at, it makes no difference. If there is an employee who is involved in misconduct or something like, I'm just choosing that now, protection from unfair dismissal from day one, all that means is that the employer should follow fair procedures before dismissal. If the employer it's very, very easy to dismiss an employee. We would actually like to see that tightened up, which is not in the bill. All an employer needs is a reasonable belief that something was done wrong. No proof, no evidence, a reasonable belief, and to follow fair procedures. So it doesn't matter if they're a trade union or not. A trade union will not defend, the indefensible.
No.
You know what I mean? So they if there's a problem there, the employer, even if it's protection from day one, follow the fair procedures. You have a reasonable belief. There's the next stage, if the employee was trying to cause problems, they have to go through the LRA for an early conciliation process before they go to the tribunal. If they do not have reasonable grounds for a case, which they have to put their bones of the case in the form, the tribunal say you don't have a case. There's a wee bit of fear has been, but again, it's about understanding.
Communicate that within your members that with rights come responsibilities as well.
That's a good point, and we actually do training in ICTU. Again with the Department for the Economy, and we do joint training between frontline managers and trade union reps for a number of companies, and that is about breaking down the barriers that are, so that managers don't reach for disciplines whenever somebody does something wrong, and the members don't automatically go for grievances. Human resources love this training because it builds a relationship where informally a manager can go to the trade union rep and say, you want to have a word with that guy? There's a problem here. You know what I mean? And the rep can go over and say, you need to watch it. You're going to end up with discipline. And that's, so again, these are one of the benefits that trade unions bring, but that's, and it's through that, sorry.
If I may, you also see the problem when you've got a small business, 10 employees, you mightn't have an HR department. It's the owner of the business, self-employed person, is trying to sort of deliver the HR side of the business. As the pressures, on a human level, that has to be recognised, the pressures that they face. Mm-hmm. And as Tina McKenzie said from the FSB, the worry is that you will be over-bureaucratic at the cost of productivity, economic growth.
Sorry, you won't see a trade union in a place like, say, talk about the pub and the rest of it. You won't see a trade union unless there's a problem, either a problem with the business, where they're taking help from the workforce in the trade union, or there's a problem like a problem member of staff, or there's problems between two members of staff, or there's a management bullying or something like that. And again, the trade union comes in with the attitude of let's solve this dispute.
Yeah.
There's a problem here, and we're the experts in solving the disputes and the rest of it. There's no requirement for human resources. And if we are talking about sectoral collective bargaining, there can be alternative dispute mechanisms built into the sectoral collective agreements for solving problems that don't end up in tribunals. That's how it used to be done before we had unfair dismissals in the UK. So that all these kind of things can be set up.
The communication piece is really important. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you very much for coming along. I have no doubt that the committee will continue to be engaged with you and your members once we get an indication from the Minister in terms of the policy decisions and a draft bill. We as a committee are hoping that we see that sooner rather than later, and I'm sure you are too. So thank you for all the work that you do. It's a very important one. The committee values our relationship with you and those who you represent, so we're open to discussions and collaboration moving forward. Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really good. It's really good.
Okay, colleagues, just one item I wanted to follow up on was if members content that we seek to see full copy of the whose response to the consultation process. I think it would just be useful for us to be able to see those. Prize for whoever reads the 125 pages first. Is there anything else, Peter?
Couldn't think of anything.
Okay. Members content with that? Okay. Well, then move on to item 7, our friends from the Deluxe Group.
Oh, sorry, we'll just get the witnesses. In the meantime, do you want to welcome to the public gallery? Should we? Yep, so we're just getting the witnesses.
Maya, can I welcome you along here to committee today? You're on work placement. You're very welcome.
Cheers, thank you very much. And I think we go straight to Karen. We can go straight.
Come on down, as they say. And,
you warm members, do you want me to open the window? Are you okay?
It is warm.
Okay, colleagues, I'm delighted to welcome our friends from the Deluxe Group. I've had the pleasure of visiting some of their sites in the past, and I'm really looking forward to hearing their evidence session today. It's a really exciting business that is at the leading edge of global development and puts Northern Ireland and our province on the map. So I'm delighted to have you here today. So Colin, Richard and Ruth, you're all very welcome, and I'm very happy to hand over to you at this stage, and apologies for keeping you waiting.
I'll begin by thanking you, Chair, and members of the committee. This is a great opportunity for us to tell a very positive story from Northern Ireland, and one of a success and actually a growing creative industry sector in Northern Ireland. I'll introduce myself. I'm Richard Hill. I'm Business Development Director. Ruth Smith, Head of HR, and Colin Conley is the Managing Director. We provided the committee with a briefing document, which I hope was useful, and I will just give a quick summary of some of the key points, which we could hopefully discuss later. A bit of background on the company. The Deluxe Group is a unique Northern Ireland company, quite unusual. We're based in Portadown, and we've actually grown from a painting and decorating business into a company, I suppose, where a blend of creativity, advanced manufacturing, and interior fit-out. And indeed, we're delivering projects now internationally for recognised brands. The company has built up a specialist expertise in creating sets and props that bring to life television, films that would be very well known internationally. We also create immersive attractions for clients such as Disney and Universal, well known. We also work in the luxury hotel sector, quite a lot of work in London. Branded residential has been successful in London as well, and in the last 10 years we're doing quite a lot of work in the cruise line sector, which thankfully is a growing sector. You can see our work locally. Game of Thrones hopefully is something, if you haven't visited, I would recommend having a look. It's a great advert for the creative skills in Northern Ireland. We're very proud of it. In Banbridge, Giant's Causeway Visitor Centre, if you've ever been through there, that's a Deluxe project. And locally, the AC Marriott and the Fitzwilliam Hotels in Belfast actually are part of our work as well. I'm sure you'll all agree that in recent years, success of Game of Thrones, indeed, Line of Duty, a lot of the television shows that are award-winning, they've really helped shine a spotlight on Northern Ireland's creative industries. So this has been a great platform, and in fact has helped us, even with clients such as Disney and Universal, to relate to Northern Ireland as, oh, that's the place where Game of Thrones was made. So that quite helps us. Whenever you look at the statistics in behind the creative industries, and you look at them in a UK context, they're actually a great success story, and Northern Ireland's part of that. In 2021, the UK was the world's 5th largest exporter of creative services at 45.6 billion, which is, and the 7th largest exporter of creative goods at 9.1 billion. So these are significant numbers. And in fact, the creative industries are the fastest growing sector of the UK economy, contributing approximately 125 billion annually. So quite impressive statistics. In the context of Northern Ireland, also some good numbers. I was quite surprised when I did some research for this. Gross value added in this sector in Northern Ireland is 1.2 billion in 2020, which is very significant. It represents 2.9% of Northern Ireland's total GVA. Employment, 37,000 jobs, and we have 3,500 creative businesses, accounting for 3.8% of all of the business units in Northern Ireland. So this is a significant sector, and the good news is that this is a sector that's growing. And even better news to us is that both the UK government have prioritised the creative sector industries, and we're very pleased. We're here today, and we see that the Northern Ireland Executive is really focusing on this sector and hopefully sees the potential in it, which is great. A bit about us. So for the Deluxe Group, I would say a key factor in our success, particularly in the last 5 years, has been international. We have scaled up. We are working outside of Northern Ireland, and in fact, we have our growth has been led by exports. And this is really being fueled by what we call the experience economy. And this is actually one of the world's fastest growing economies. In fact, it was estimated to be worth 1.8 trillion. And it's a sector that survived the COVID pandemic. It was obviously very tough. A lot of businesses were closed down. We were actually very busy during the pandemic working on projects across the world. Adopted a lot of new technology during that period. And in fact, what's happening is post-COVID, this industry has bounced back with even more investment, powered by this growth of the experience economy. And essentially, people now would like to buy memories, share experiences, rather than actually spend their money on goods. We all now appreciate much more post-COVID. So this is a long-term trend which is fueling, I guess, our growth. We have a very good track record in design and manufacturing, and they tend to be projects that are story-led, or when we do the film or television projects, they are intellectual property. So we have targeted markets and been very successful, particularly in the theme park sector, USA, Middle East, France, Spain, Germany, and even Japan. The demand for the company's expertise has fueled our export sales, and they've grown from 5% in 2018 to 56% of our total sales in 2023, which is an actual increase of 133%. So I think you can see once you start to get out into the international markets and realise that you have got a value proposition, very good workmanship, that Northern Ireland can be a success story. In fact, in May of this year, it will be broadcast in the news. We can't say what it is, but we will be part of the opening of the company's largest and most prestigious project to date. And this is a theme park in Orlando, which lots of people from Northern Ireland will hopefully visit. And I think it's going to be an amazing showcase for the talent, innovation and creative skills from Northern Ireland. We have found that very positive news, the local ecosystem here for export support and advice has been very beneficial. And we've been very actively supported by Invest Northern Ireland and the Department of Business and Trade in our efforts to develop these overseas markets. In terms of skills, the Deluxe Group is a very ambitious innovator, and we're very aware that our USP is actually our talented workforce. This is one of the things that Northern Ireland has got lots of, is talent. We're located in a well-connected and commercially sustainable local economy, and we are definitely supported by some excellent academic and technical education institutions. And there is a great support ecosystem here in Northern Ireland, which probably is quite unique, and a lot of our contemporaries in the rest of the United Kingdom are very jealous of what we have here in Northern Ireland. Showcasing Northern Ireland's craftsmanship on this global stage, it's allowed us to invest into our people in innovation. Our new talent is supported through an apprenticeship. Ruth will talk about that in joinery and furniture production. We're working very closely with the Southern Regional College. And we have a great partnership with Ulster University, and that's led to 24 undergraduates completing yearly placements over the last 5 years, with 19 securing full-time careers. So we really are creating quite high-value jobs, and that is a great relationship we have with both the college and the university. Securing this international business has actually allowed us to pay wages in Northern Ireland that are above average salaries by almost 15%. So these really are the high-value jobs that we're really looking for to grow our economy. And these are young people doing jobs that they love, which is what we all dream of. In terms of innovation has been a real critical factor in the company's success. We have got to compete internationally, so we've got to be smarter than the companies that are based in those local markets. So we've got to work a little bit harder on that. One thing we would like to point out is we certainly feel that there needs to be a review of the UK's tax credit and R&D scheme. It doesn't seem to really fit well with companies that are in the creative industries, and that's something we've got a little bit frustrated with, and I'm sure we're maybe not alone in that. In terms of some other challenges, we've mentioned skilled labour. I would say we're not alone in the difficulty of trying to find some skilled labour in Northern Ireland. It is a job market that is quite difficult, and that's why one of the solutions has been growing our own apprenticeship scheme and really bringing young people in and training them through and bringing them right through the company. So that is our ethos. One of the concerns we have that we pointed out in our briefing was expansion. Certainly one of the barriers to a company like ourselves based where we are. There is quite a lot of industry, and I guess for the last few years there maybe hasn't been industrial parks, land purchased, and we definitely see a frustration with trying to expand. And we're a company that has expanded over the last 20 years, and hopefully you'll get to see, Philip's seen the size and scale of what we have. People would be amazed. But that is frustrated. There's obviously infrastructure challenges here in Northern Ireland, and I'm sure you're well aware, water supply and sewage, it's really critical. So that is an area that I think really needs to look at. Planning, really, I think is, I'm sure you've heard it so many times. I hear it from investors. They think Northern Ireland is the most frustrating place ever. I know investors would love to build new visitor attractions in Northern Ireland, but they are put off by our very fragmented and frustrated planning system. So that would certainly be something. And those new visitor attractions, they are great work for ourselves, loads of other companies operated, and I think you'll all agree that with the amazing investments that we've done in the past few years with Titanic, these are a huge catalyst and regionally can absolutely transform local economies right throughout Northern Ireland. So we'd like to see a lot more of that. Opportunities, we want to mention probably the biggest opportunity that will come along in a generation is Universal Studios, very good client of ours, would like to build a new theme park in Bedford. This has been widely publicised, and we know it's been discussed at national government level. And we would really encourage all of our political representatives here in Northern Ireland to support this development. We've been fortunate to have the Secretary of State visit us. We gave him a magic wand, told him to go to the Cabinet Office and wave that wand in front of Lisa Nandy and Jonathan Reynolds. So this could be a big boost for Northern Ireland right across creative industries and lots of other sectors, construction. And I'm old enough to remember when 1,500 people from Northern Ireland actually helped build Euro Disney in Paris. There was a daily flight from Aldergrove to Paris with workers across every industry you could think of. So Northern Ireland has that talent, and let's hopefully it will be in Bedford in the next year or two. There's a lot of evidence that very smart, clever investments by the Northern Ireland Executive have worked. For example, the allocation of 5.2 million to Future Screens in Northern Ireland, big success story from 2018 to 2022, resulted in creation of 451 jobs, 101 million in co-investment. We really commend the Department of Communities for that really pivotal investment and initiative within the creative sector. Likewise, Northern Ireland Screen, doing a fantastic job. We would really encourage support of that. It's generated hundreds of millions in the local economic activity. My own daughter has been involved in that industry, and it's wonderful to see your children working in the creative industries and having actual employment. I think their projections are 431 million spending over 4 years from 2022 to 2026. So this is a real success story. So to sum up, the evidence of the economic, cultural and social value of investing in the creative industries in Northern Ireland, I think, is a compelling story. Economically, this sector is contributing to GDP. It's providing high-value jobs, and it's fueling exports like ourselves. Culturally, it's boosting tourism. It serves as actually a soft power in our cultural diplomacy. Socially, it fosters community engagement, well-being, diversity and educational opportunities. And I think if we could get together, have a strategic plan for investment, I think we could collectively make this generation of creatives the most successful ever in terms of global reach, cultural influence, and economic impact. And I would encourage the Economic Committee to be bold, ambitious, and act quickly in investing in the creative industries. Thank you.
Sure, thank you very much indeed. Wish we could bottle your enthusiasm and just use it across Northern Ireland. It would be great. Just to put some meat on the bones for other members, could you maybe give some examples of the work that the group, not the stuff that's obviously commercially sensitive, but that's recently been completed, that's been made in Portadown or been made near the international airport and is now some of the most visited sites in the entire world?
Yes, well, just to give you an example, only 2 weeks ago we had 17 people from Disney in Northern Ireland, some of them actually in our workshops. So every time you were flying out of Aldergrove, there was some incredible sets being built for Disney Cruise Line. As I say, the project at the theme park over at Universal has taken us 3 years. It's probably one of the biggest investments Universal have ever made, and that will be very immersive. It will be an IP that will be familiar to everyone. It's one of the UK's great success stories. Started from a book in Edinburgh and now is a multi-billion-pound industry, which illustrates how a writer can start with a story. The story becomes successful, the book becomes a movie, and a company like ourselves ends up building theme park attractions. So really investing in that talent can create a whole industry. Game of Thrones, you'll be familiar with that. If you're in London, in Westminster, you will walk past 2 very impressive buildings. One is the Old War Office, which is a huge conversion. It has Winston Churchill's office. Ian Fleming had an office there. And lots of Northern Ireland work in that. We're very proud of it. Great Scotland Yard is a 5-star hotel where the history of the Metropolitan Police, it now tells the whole story of that. Jack the Ripper was investigated there. So you will see, as I mentioned before, a lot of story-driven, and this is because what people are looking for is experiences, and that's what works very well. And in fact, an experience which is probably premium is where we think the market is. So lots of examples. Hopefully you'll get to see some of our work.
I just think that, it's a story that we need to be better at telling, is that, these ones that you have completed, be that in other parts of the world, are some of the most visited sites or most well-known attractions in the world, and they're built here in Northern Ireland. In terms of the work that we do here and trying to support that work, so the Screen Industry Sectoral Action Plan was the department's answer to it. My personal view, not the committee's view, is that was weak and that it didn't learn from the best and all the great work that's going on. What do you think the department physically can do here in Northern Ireland quite quickly to, one, showcase the work that's already going on, but also bring in that next generation of company? Not that we want people to take away your business, but that next generation of companies that cluster together and we become known as an economic powerhouse for this sort of stuff.
Well, I think your first point is actually telling the story. We are in the business of telling stories, and we have great writers, script writers, but we had a visit by Joe Kennedy III, and at the end of the visit he sat down in our boardroom and he said, "Oh my goodness, this is a story that just isn't heard." So I think probably the first thing is, as a creative industries, certainly the screen industry has done very well, but I think we need to maybe widen the perspective, and we need to actually tell that story. That might mean, one of the things I've discovered is we're maybe very fragmented in the way we have lots of different agencies and companies and people working in what you could call the creative industries, but I think we're actually behind other regions. I think Scotland are way ahead of us telling the story, and I think Northern Ireland actually is a much better story to tell. So I think we need to maybe bring together, whether it's a task force or whether it's a conference or a group. I think we maybe need to learn some lessons from branding. You know, you've got huge success stories here that are branding stories. The Wild Atlantic Way has reinvigorated a whole tourist industry. You know, everybody knows what Silicon Valley is, everybody knows what Hollywood is. Maybe Northern Ireland needs to have this encapsulated in whatever. I'm sure someone will come up with that. I think there's things to be done there. Ruth, you can maybe say about skills and education. I think maybe that's an area.
Absolutely. I think it's more so as well as to recognise the value the creative industries bring to the economy and also culturally as well. And there is good jobs out there within the creative industries. Particularly with STEM, we talk about the sciences, the technology, the engineering, the maths, but it's also bringing that art into it, where our counterparts in England do recognise that in early education. It's bringing that early on in the foundation stages of education, and also educating our careers teachers. They do a great job, but it's letting them know what good jobs look like within the creative industries and the professionals that is out there. I mean, we're a one-stop shop in the sense that we have designers who are degree educated, we have joiners who go through the apprenticeship programme, but they're very much developed within the creative industries as well, working on some of the largest IPs within the world. So it's showing that there is real jobs out there, and also bringing the education, the skills from the classroom to industry. So.
Okay, thank you. Diana?
Thank you very much for your presentation. That was really, really invigorating. I mean, I'm kind of creative in certain ways, and that just really suits. You know, I just see the vision, I see the progress. I mean, it's astonishing what you've achieved, and that this is a really good news story for Northern Ireland. You know, I would like to see this being supported. I know I represent Fermanagh South Tyrone. I know in Southwest College there's games animation there. I know that I've seen students follow that through and go on to De Montfort University and progress from there. And you know, I think I'm very interested in your Super Mario or in the Mario Kart attraction at Nintendo World, because gaming is the next level.
Yes.
And I'm interested to see how advanced other developers are in developing this genre.
Yes, I've just come back from Saudi Arabia, and they are going to build a city, right, in the next 5 years, which is all gaming, right? A lot of our work has been film IP, and they actually are saying that the world of gaming IP is an even bigger market. So there's lots of work can be done. Yes, we were involved in Super Mario Kart. You wear Google glasses, you fly around a track, and you actually game. And the big thing about gaming is that you come back to play the game, which actually means if you have an attraction and you can get the visitors to come back and play it again and again, you know, it's actually a lot more commercially sustainable. So this is one of the big growth areas, and definitely one of the areas that probably be connected up. And I think if you look at Dundee, Dundee has been maybe the university with the pioneer of those degrees that are in gaming. And Dundee now, I think, is a UNESCO design city. They have really taken this on board, and they have branded themselves, and they're seen now as internationally. But Northern Ireland is really up there. World-class companies here, and sometimes I think in our industry, maybe we're quite focused on our part, but where I start to see the potential is if we could just join the dots up a little bit, and maybe if we can speak to that industry, they might have IP that we can work with and license, and maybe Northern Ireland can generate its own new
Do you
attractions.
come together almost like a convention of the gaming industry where you can bring them together and really identify, you know, the opportunities and where you can fit in with that in the experiential offering?
Yes, we're very fortunate that we're involved with maybe 3 trade associations. And what's worth mentioning, I've just joined the board of Experience UK. So this was an initiative by the Department of Business and Trade that really wanted to take the best of these British companies and put them together and have them as a vehicle to promote overseas. The Department of Business and Trade has a fantastic network and really a great support. And what's great to see now is they have an office in Belfast. They have a person dedicated to creative, and they're very much focusing on this. So there is a pathway and a channel to go international. And there are trade associations, and it's a matter of us trying to learn who the companies are here, trying to speak to them. There's fantastic animation companies here. Quite a lot of our work has actually been creating visitor attractions from animation. That could be another stream of local animation companies developing their attractions based upon their IP. There's a lot of great ones in Derry, a lot of talent coming out of there. So yes, there are channels, and it may well be that maybe the industry is a little bit disconnected, all working in its channel, and I think we need to widen the horizons here and maybe have a bit more joined up thinking and see how these can overlap, and as a country we could join together and maybe harness the potential, put the investment into the right channels, and as you can see, we're evidence that it can work. We've certainly found that on the international stage, Northern Ireland really is world class. You've seen awards and films and everything, so I think this is just going to be go on, has huge potential if we can get it right.
And one other question, if I could, quickly. I see that that recently it was announced that film studio business rates relief of 40% had been given to studios in England until 2034, obviously in recognition of the importance of the film industry there, the creatives there. Do you think that would you look for business relief to grow your sector further, and in return, given the GVA you've just demonstrated to us, that you can see the return back into the economy as a result of that? Absolutely.
I think if you haven't visited, I would certainly recommend. We are about to go supersonic, I think, with our film industry here, because of the investment in Studio Ulster. Mm-hmm. This is really a game changer. This is going to be a facility that is going to be better than anywhere else in the world. Mm-hmm. So there is an opportunity for clusters, for cross-pollination between what we do, Studio Ulster. We, absolutely, we need to, I think, double down on the investment, because we are on a trajectory that I hope in 10 years' time, if I come back to speak to you, we'll all go, wow, wasn't that amazing? There are some of the best talent here, and the investments that have been made, I think, have been very, very smart. So congratulations on contributing to that. But yes, relief, business relief, R&D tax credits, anything at all that is an incentive and gets the catalyst of this going, I would support.
David?
You talked just a second ago about widening the horizon, joining up and sort of that, 'cause the story of your company is phenomenal. It's absolutely brilliant, and we talk regularly in here about scaling, how we scale stuff and that success. So absolutely fabulous. But you've talked about that, you know, bringing cluster and bringing together. Are you suggesting that department leads that, or who leads? You need somebody to focus on that and bring it together. You know,
Yeah.
who's that?
Absolutely. I think it's more a task force or a champion, you know, with specific focus on creative industries. You know, we have that within other sectors, but we don't have that specifically with the creative industries like we do within.
Okay, so you're asking the department really to have or to put forward somebody and as that
Support
lead
it.
and support. Yeah. Okay.
I think it would help to have a champion,
Yeah.
but I think it will be an industry-led, because once we all start collaborating, that's where the innovation comes, that's where the sharing
The
of
bit I'm
ideas.
asking is how that starts.
To be honest, our biggest issue at the moment is our ambition to expand.
Okay.
Which is a problem, which shouldn't be a problem.
Brilliant problem.
As Richard mentioned, we're in Portadown. We've 90,000 square foot facility there.
Okay.
We're at the airport. We've a couple of hangars rented up there for another 40,000 on a long-term lease. So our next ambition is to expand. In order to expand, we need ground, we need warehousing. A problem we have at the moment is that the long-term lease we have at the airport is fine, but because of the lack of land and lack of planning, lack of infrastructure, landlords can now basically ask for £10 a square foot. So if we move now to new premises of say 40,000 square foot, that's £400,000 a year that we have to pass on to our clients, which makes us uneconomical, doesn't add value. South of Lough Neagh, there's very little infrastructure for industrial land. We appreciate that InvestNI are looking at Mandeville, which is 95 acres, which is great, but as it stands, there's planning, there's infrastructure, there's roads, there's sewage, there's broadband, there's so many hurdles to cross. You could be looking at a 5-year plan here, which obviously will not work for us. So in order to expand, you know, grow clusters, we need sort of one department for everything. Even the industrial land should be almost plug and play, where everything is there, ready to go.
Yeah, so you lead me on that very nicely to Invest. So you talk through about the programs that Invest have been done. So what you're looking for really is the support in actual capital, actually structure, actually the fundamental where you are. Is that the support you need?
Yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah.
So we would need infrastructure in place. We would need, as I don't mean to repeat myself, plug and play systems where we know what size of factory we need. Everything is there and ready. So if we decide to do something, 2 years' time, we'll be up and running.
Yes.
So we need
the speed.
Yeah, like Wales, for example, have a one-stop shop
Okay.
where everything's under one roof. Here, there's the DOE, there's the planning office, there's roads, there's water, whatever. It's just very fragmented, so it needs to be brought together.
Yeah. Okay. And then just lastly for me, then corporation tax. If we look at that, is that a barrier to growth, or is that?
Well, yeah, yes.
Okay.
If you look at the south of Ireland,
Yeah.
obviously theirs is changing slightly, but the Irish government are bending over backwards basically to get investment, and that's not something we want to do. But you know, there has been negotiations, and that is part of the incentive. Corporation tax.
For yourselves, if you can't get the space here, that you would look potentially.
It may be an option, to be honest. As Richard said, our competitors are global. Okay, so there's very few of us in the UK our size. So if we have a once-in-a-lifetime project, as Richard had mentioned, we cannot use an excuse where we've no land, we've no warehousing to sort of
100%.
retract from the bid. An example we've had to do this year is to outsource some of our work outside of the UK because we just don't have the space to do this. So that takes money out of the economy and doesn't create any jobs. So,
just to clarify that, so the issue, the fundamental, and this is we hear this repeatedly, and the success you're having. So the fundamental problem is outside of our committee. That's in infrastructure with the core infrastructure, with planning issues, water and waste. We hear it repeatedly in the economy. You know, the barriers to growth in our economy have been those. But the bit that so that the fundamental issues to allow you to scale, or I'm just trying to nail this right down. So is that, and the attraction to the south would be the corporation tax alongside having the land and the buildings, or is it just the buildings and the
land and building and infrastructure?
Yeah, okay.
It's top of the list. Obviously, tax.
Yeah, it's an incentive. Yeah,
it's an incentive, but the infrastructure is the key.
Okay.
To the whole thing.
Thank you very much, and wish you all the very best and everything. Brilliant.
Some of it does fall under our remit. You know, the regional land strategy that Invest and I are due to take forward is to provide these plug-in sites that they're already developed. They have the infrastructure there, they have the telecommunications there, they have the sewage there sorted, and they then go out to their clients in Northern Ireland to say, here is a suite of options. How can we get you onto this site and get you expanding? Because that's what we want to see them do. Gary?
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to you all. Really, really impressed when I read the written briefing. I was amazed to see actually the level of stuff, places that I've been to, visited, didn't realise that the hands of people in Northern Ireland are all over it, which is of course another excuse to go again. In terms of a lot of questions have been asked, I'm not going to repeat them. We look forward to visiting Game of Thrones in the next number of weeks, so we're excited to see that. In terms of the skills pipeline, that's an area that I'm interested in terms of those who, young people who, as you say, Ruth, may not be pushed into that area just on the basis of the careers advice that they're getting, and that's no, I suppose, reflection, on the personalities involved. It's just the fact that we're not geared towards that. Your thoughts in terms of, you have some good work ongoing in terms of the woodwork and all of that. And there's brilliant young people out there who may not be suited to the academic route of going down the universities, etc., but are very, very creative, clearly when it comes to some of those other skills. So in terms of that expansion, is there a need to expand beyond just the one college? Do we need to see a rollout of further courses?
Absolutely. Very much so. We are connected well with Southern Regional College. At the moment we have 10 apprentices at various levels throughout the business, particularly within furniture making. We do have connections also with ATU in Letterfrack. I believe they were up a few weeks ago or a few months ago with yous. And they are the Centre of Excellence in Ireland for furniture making innovation, and these students are excellent. They do come and see us annually as well, and we do provide work experience. So if we could get more of that, more opportunities and more investment in that area within the local institutions, it would help businesses grow even further and very much connect what they're learning in education and bringing the industry to life as well, their skills.
Okay, no, there's lots of questions and lots of things, but I'm looking forward just to getting out on site, to be honest, and seeing some of the things. But congratulations and well done, because it's amazing.
You, Patrick?
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, Chair, it's not letting me connect there. Yeah, is that me now?
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah, so look, it was just around apprenticeships again. It's obviously something that I don't want to kind of go over what you've just said, but it's a topic that I'm really interested in. I suppose hearing from yourselves, particularly in the growing sector, it's going to be something that a huge number of people are going to be attracted to and want to take part in. So I suppose around that, one of the things we'd looked at in apprenticeships before was sometimes how it's difficult for employers to take on apprentices due to a number of factors really, but due to insurance, due to some of the paperwork, the bureaucracy around that. So from your experience as a business, and obviously you've mentioned the number of apprentices that you already have, which is fantastic, but what could make that process easier, more streamlined for yourselves?
I suppose again it's recognising the opportunities. If we refer to even the document Creative UK report, I encourage you to read that. 35% of the job vacancies in Northern Ireland is due to skill shortages. So it's very much, educating again careers teachers of the opportunities there, the trade, where that can take them to. A lot of our apprentices as well, whilst they start out within joinery, they end up within programming, estimating, and the commercial side of the business as well, design. So again, it's just realising the potential that the good jobs that we talk about can start from an apprenticeship programme. In terms of bureaucracy, again, we attend the Southern Regional College Open Night. It's well attended by parents and students. So again, it's continuing to promote that, and we are fortunate with the catchment area and the work that we do that we are an employer of choice for many apprentices. So again, it's just continuing to build on that awareness of the opportunities out there and the skills and where the careers can lead to.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I suppose just the insurance piece, is that something that as a barrier to yourselves as employers? Because we had spoken to a couple of employers locally who wanted to take apprentices on, but just in terms of the insurance premiums that they were being quoted at, it just wasn't an option for them. Is that something that you've come across, or has it been?
And it's something we absorb. If we could get help with it, it's always very welcome, but it is something we absorb within the business. Unfortunately, we do see the investment with apprentices, but of course, if there's any assistance or any aid with insurance, it's always welcome.
I appreciate that. Look, to be honest, I think it's fantastic to hear from yourselves. It's fantastic, and you mentioned the jobs in Derry as well, and the opportunities there. So I know I've been working really closely with Ulster University, and it's really exciting to hear what's happening. So just looking forward to working with you into the future. Chair, just on that, I just think that this is, a recurrent theme that we've heard around insurance prices. So I think it's something that we should flag up again. I know we had insurance experts on before, and ABIN as well. So I'm just wondering if there's potentially something we can do as a committee to write to them just to reflect that this is the reality for businesses, because we should be working in our role as a committee to try and remove any barriers. So like if there's something we can do there, it would be really welcome.
And I will follow that up at the end of this evidence session. Kate.
Thank you, Chair. What a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much, and genuinely so inspiring. I think, Ruth, when you were saying that about careers, I remember going to my careers and saying that I wanted to be a set designer, and the careers advisor saying, no, like not a real job. And like, maybe I'd be working for Deluxe and not an M&A if I'd had the right advice.
Amazing set designer show.
Yeah, no, but I mean, it's a wonderful story, and I think this is so important because I think there's so many young people who've grown up here. They've either felt that they couldn't have a career that they could be proud of, or that they had to leave to achieve it. And you're creating opportunities that are really cool and something to be proud of, and something really good for our economy. So it's a really positive success story. I love how you mentioned the grassroots in your briefing. I'm on the board of Youth Lyric, and Richard, I think you could be the champion who does all of this. It's been really interesting. So much of it has been covered, and your key asks are set out. The only thing I have to ask, and it's just because I'm interested in this, but is your business looking at AI, copyright, intellectual property? Is this something that is coming into the work you're doing?
Yes, I'm sure you'll all be aware. I think yesterday there was quite a big campaign in all of the national newspapers. AI has great potential, certainly for the medical sector. Currently, I believe there is a consultation with the UK government, and I would say emphatically that the creative industries are very concerned that the government are taking the wrong approach to this. I spoke earlier about a particular writer wrote a book, and this has created an industry we're working in. It is going to be vital that creatives have their intellectual property protected. And I think there's consensus about this. There's a word used in that AI world called scrape, where they're actually scraping all of this data and information. So I would certainly encourage Northern Ireland, if it hasn't already, please tell the UK government to think about this, particularly if this is a very important sector for Northern Ireland, and we are encouraging our writers, our creatives. We need to have protection of that intellectual property, because actually the true value in creativity we're finding, especially when you scale it and go internationally, is we want that value to come back to Northern Ireland. So this definitely needs to be something I think that you need to raise, to bring up, and I would say it's a, when you listen to, I think Paul McCartney mentioned, as the Beatles, all they wanted to do was a job they love and pay the bills. Now, if that is taken away, and suddenly AI is in the world of the creative and reproducing content, and a local artist here has produced some work. And one of the things that has been a transformation in our industry is technology and digital. Digital allows us to sit in Portadown, work with companies all around the world, but it also is the means of distribution for a lot of the creative industries. You can be in Derry, Fermanagh, Portadown, anywhere in Northern Ireland, work as a creative industry globally throughout the world. Right? If the means of distribution is putting all your content onto a digital format and then it's been scraped by AI companies and you're seeing it reproduced, then that value is being literally stolen. So I think this is you can see is a very emotive topic for that creative industries, and I'd love to see Northern Ireland speak up, which is a very important sector for us to say, look, you need to think this. We don't want US tech companies taking the value from what's created here in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, and that's really useful to hear that, because we're kind of in our own space where in the south they're following EU regulation, and in the UK they don't really have regulation, and so we're trying to find our space. But as it develops so rapidly, we need to have very core principles, and I think the intrinsic human qualities are really important to protect. And it fits in nicely with everything you've said about how we're on the cusp of being this hub, and so we have to really protect that. Well, thank you so much, and all the best with everything that you're doing. It's been really, really inspiring having you here today. Thank you.
Sinead, how do you link this back to
There's lots of land in the northwest. We'll support you in any way you can. But seriously, I'm just kind of following up on a couple of things in the papers that we probably need to look at after you leave. You mentioned about some of the challenges in relation to the immigration policy changes in relation to visas for workers. Can you just maybe talk us through that so that we can see what we can do to break down those barriers for you, if at all possible? And then secondly, you talked about the new task force being set up under the Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, and no Northern Ireland representation. I think this committee would be very supportive of writing to the Culture Secretary and advocating that we do have that representation as well. So, but maybe if you could talk to the immigration issues that you're currently experiencing in terms of visas.
Okay, I will cover that in terms of visas and immigration. So a lot of our work is also in Europe as well. We work for some of our cruise lines, the big well-known cruise lines that Richard mentioned. And with that, you will know since Brexit, UK workers need a visa to work in the EU. So we have employees who are Northern Irish that can't benefit from having dual passports. So that's okay. But we also have employees who are critical to the project who were born in the UK and are limited to UK passports. And they don't have the right to work in the UK, as we mentioned. When you go to get visas, there's no support. You phone different embassies. It's straight through to an automated helpline, refers you to the internet. There's just a dead end at everywhere you go. And then you are limited to business purposes only within 90 days, as you will be aware of. So again, it's that support from embassies in the UK where help us get the visa we need to go and do legitimate business and complete a project. And it is critical to get those people on site during the final stages. Most of the work, you will know, is designed and manufactured here in Northern Ireland, but it's during that critical install stages, surveys, that we need our people on site. And with those UK passport holders, there's no simplified process to get them to the EU to fulfil a project that is built in Northern Ireland.
And the fact that dual market access doesn't support that in any way at all in relation to the workers.
It does for the majority, Sinead, whereby you can have your Irish and British passports, but it's for those employees who we have who are UK nationals and they don't have any rights to an Irish passport, for example. So that's where we're stuck. And we understand the route, but there's no help at the end of that route in terms of getting the necessary visas that we need.
Thanks, Ruth. That's helpful. And then just in relation to the Lisa Nandy, in relation to a representation, I have no doubt that the committee will be supporting you in that. Look, it's a phenomenal story. It's an entrepreneurial story that really has resonance right across Congratulations on your development, and congratulations on that massive 56% export figure is really something that you should be congratulating yourself every day, and we want more businesses like yourselves. And I suppose in terms of the infrastructure piece, to be really honest about it, there's an enhanced investment or industrial investment zone that has been allocated to Northern Ireland. We hear very, very little about it and what it means or that, but something to do with the creative industries would have a real deep and meaningful impact as well. And so congratulations, that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for that. When we look forward to coming to visit you very soon, and I think we as a committee are going to have an important discussion here about how we can help move the dial in terms of getting a task force or a champion developed here in Northern Ireland that can actually fight for Northern Ireland. Yes, important on a UK-wide context, but we also need to look at a Northern Ireland one. So thank you so much for coming along here today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Chairperson, is the committee content in the first instance just to forward the written submission that we got from the Deluxe Group to the Committee for the Infrastructure, as there are a number of infrastructure issues, planning, water, etc. Additionally then to write to the Association of British Insurers about the apprenticeship insurance issue, is what's going on, what measures are they going to take to address what it seems to be a problem and which could very well affect the skills pipeline. Then does the committee want to write to Secretary of State Lisa Nandy, commenting first on the absence of any representation on the task force and calling for there to be such representation, commenting also on the AI challenge, the dangers of the loss of intellectual property, which is a particular relevance to Northern Ireland for an export-led business. Does the committee also want to indicate its support for the Universal Studios development in Bedford, which was indicated could actually be beneficial to Northern Ireland? If you're agreeable to that. And then additionally to write to the Home Secretary about the visa issue, the absence of support for GB, seems to be GB-born individuals perhaps working for the Deluxe Group and others, and then not able to get, or having difficulties not in getting support to get visas to work in the European Union. If that's okay on that.
That'll be enough. Okay. I would like at some stage, Peter, if we could, as a committee, to give some look at the wider creative industry / experience sector here in Northern Ireland and how we can really champion that. But hopefully, if we can try and carve out some time to have a discussion about that in the future, that would be useful.
Is that piece of who champions it?
Yes.
It's where it's the department. Is the department really the best? Is it somewhere that that I think we need a wider, with more that with others. I mean, just
there's a lot of good work being done. But it's bringing it all together is really important. That they're talking to each other.
Yeah.
Okay, are members content with that?
Yep.
Before we move to item 8, members, would we be content for a 2-minute comfort break for the chair? Do members agreed?
Yes.
Thank you.
Committee Room 30, sound.